Hello.
Good evening.
Hi, are you David?
Hi, sir.
Hello.
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 Hello. It's an honor. Hello. How are you?
Oh, I'm very well, thank you. Considering my great age.
Amazing. Thank you so much for giving us your time. It's really incredible. My name is Massimiliano. I'm Max.
Mm-hmm.
I am Davide.
Well, you're not David.
Hey, I'm here.
Yeah, okay.
And I'm Francesco.
All right then. Well, go right ahead and ask me anything you want.
Thank you so much. We wanted to talk about a little about your career, your amazing career, your all the impact that you had on movie making, on cinema, and so thank you so much. If I may, I wanted to start asking you. You directed a lot of amazing movies, cult movies like Zardos, like Excalibur, and you also wrote a lot of movies, and now you also wrote some books. How is the jump from directing to writing books? How works for someone like you?
Well, I think I have a few physical problems. One of them, most of all, is my feet, and I need to hang on to something and also I'm losing my sight a little, and so you need all your faculties for directing. At least the way I direct is that you need a great deal of energy and forethought and planning, and I just don't have the energy and the physical capabilities to direct, and I don't want to direct in a half-hearted way by delegating things as some directors do. For me, it's making a film is every frame, every piece of film is important. And when people say very often, they say, if they've been to see a film, they say, oh, I loved the film, but it was too long. And usually what they mean is that the director has got a good story and a good actors, but he hasn't succeeded in getting rid of all the things that are unnecessary. If you make a film, every frame in that film should be relevant, should be important to telling the story. And then when an audience unconsciously comes to realize that everything they're watching is important to the film, and they're not probably conscious of it even, but they unconsciously their spirits sing, because it means that they're going to watch the film that is meaningful and not just a collection of shots that may have had all sorts of things attached to them that aren't relevant to the film.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, it's my turn. Hi, sir. And nice to meet you, finally.
You too.
So my question is, why did you become a director? Was there a movie that pointed you toward this job?
Well, I worked for the BBC in England, and I made a lot of documentaries. And I was lucky, I was fortunate enough to develop my skills there. And I had the freedom to, I gradually began to write scenes, dialogues, and my documentaries gradually turned into movies. So I had made quite a few small movies before I began to make a feature film. And that, so I was well equipped, well trained. And what was your question again?
I think he was asking about which movies inspired you to start your work.
Sorry, some problems here.
You got to say that again?
Which movies inspired you to?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Thank you, Max.
I was very into. I can tell you the name of the film. I don't know whether you know it or not, but it was a great inspiration to me, and that was the life and death of Colonel Blimp.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
And when I saw that film, I thought I didn't realize that movies could tell a story like that, and it opened up to me what the possibilities were of making movies. And so I was determined to try and make theatrical movies, and I got lucky because my first film was really a semi-documentary in England, and so my first real feature film was Point Blank with Lee Marvin, and I was very lucky that film was successful, and so I was able to do a second film. And this is, an awful lot of directors that I know who had a lot of skill, and unfortunately, the first film they made didn't succeed that well, and it was very difficult then for them to get a second film. And it's a very tough field to enter, the feature filmmaking. You need a lot of perseverance. You need to get a good script. You either write it yourself or you get someone to help you writing, and everything depends on that script. And then having done that, if you've got a good script, it's a little easier to cast it. But to get the money to make a film, you need to cast a movie star or a very good film actor that people recognize. And so I was lucky in my first film though to get Lee Marvin, who was a great actor. I learned a great deal from working with him. And he was so wonderful in that he never wanted to have a discussion about a scene. But what he did was to make a gesture so that, for instance, there was a scene in Point Blank where his former wife, he has confronted, he says to her, the scene as written was that he asked her a series of questions about where is Reese, how do you get your money, and so on. And he had just had an incredibly emotional experience, but he was shooting out the bed, and he was depleted. So when we rehearsed it, she asked he didn't ask the questions, so she just waited and said her lines. And I quickly saw that he was emotionally so spent that he couldn't ask these questions. So I quickly rewrote it so that she asked, as it were, the questions for him. Like she said, the money? Oh, a guy brings it every month. And Reese. No, I haven't seen him for a long time. And it became from becoming a conventional scene, it became a scene of motions, and that's why he contributed so much to that not to the script but to the story, to the film itself. And he's also like a dancer. He could hit marks. He could move in ways that allowed you to choreograph the film that a less physical actor couldn't do those moves. So you have to work to the actor's strengths and try to overcome his weaknesses, and that's the role of a director.
Okay.
And let's talk about a big movie cult, Excalibur. Yeah. How did you create that incredible visual style and aesthetic?
Well, I wanted to cast the film basically with young actors, unknowns, really. So Lancelot, Arthur, and many of them were doing their first film. And so in the case of Nicole Williamson, who played Merlin, I had a clear idea. I saw how that part should be played, and I wanted him to do it. Well, the studio, which was United Artists, they'd done 4 films with Nicole Williamson, and they'd all bombed and they'd all failed. So they said, look, cast anyone you like in the world, but not Nicole Williamson. So I looked around and I tried to think of others, but he stayed in my mind. And I was having lunch in a restaurant with the casting director, Mary Selway, and I said, what are you going to do? She said, what are you going to do about Merlin? And I said, oh, fuck it, I'm going to cast Nicole. Fuck United Artists. And at that point, purely coincidentally, he walked into the restaurant, and Mary said, Nicole, John wants to cast you as Merlin. And Nicole said, who's playing Morgana? That's the witch. So he said, I said, Helen Mirren. He said, then I couldn't possibly play Merlin. I said, why not? He said, we did Macbeth together. And she wanted me to fuck her, and I wouldn't. So I went to Helen, and I'd already cast Helen Mirren. I said to her, what's this problem you have with Nicole? And she said, oh, well, we did this play together, and he wanted to fuck me, and I wouldn't. So it was anyway, I cast them both, and they were, they hated being together, but it worked for the story, really, because they were enemies in the film.
Yeah, incredible. Thanks.
Well, saying on Excalibur, I have a few technical questions that a friend of mine, Scott McClellan, asked me to ask you if I can. He wanted to know what made you choose to add that that beautiful green glow to Excalibur in the movie?
The green what?
The green glow on the sword on Excalibur.
Oh, the green light.
The green light, yeah.
You see, well, what we were doing in the film throughout the film is that in the daylight scenes, we were putting strong green light onto the mosses and the leaves to give them a kind of slightly unreal moss. With you light it, it glows, and trying to constantly, in every scene, we were trying to use all sorts of devices to make it feel magical rather than real, and so the green light is reflected on the sword.
Oh, wow, amazing. Amazing. Yeah, that movie is such an iconic and important movie for so many people and for movie history. It's amazing.
Yeah. It's an inspiration for the new filmmaker, Excalibur.
Yeah.
It's an inspiration. And
an interesting thing about that film, Excalibur, is I made that, it was a long time ago now, 81 and 1981 to 83. And it was that film, all the special effects we did in the camera at the time. And there was nothing done in post-production. And so it was just before the advent of special effects,
CGI.
It was just before digital effects, so it was, and I was very happy to have devised ways of the special effects being done in the camera at the time, and the film had the whole score and everything was done both in mono and in spread sound.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Sir, you are a great screenwriter. And how do you get inspiration for writing?
Well, it's a way, screenwriting is a way of approaching it. To me, it's a way of I generally write with a wall in front of me, and I look at and I project. In my imagination, I project the scenes, and then I describe them, and it's always that there's a screenwriting process called final draft that everyone uses it, and it's a way of laying out the common thing. But I never used it really. I used to just describe what the scene was in my imagination, and I described it. And of course, I don't know anyone who shoots the first draft.
Yeah.
There's always other drafts to go through to refine it. I think that maybe there are some screenwriters or directors who can get it right first time, but generally speaking, it takes 3 or 4 drafts to get it right. Yeah, and of course, very often once you cast a film, the actor you know, you never cast the perfect actor to play in your imagination. So once you've cast the actor, you generally need to make some changes in the scenes whether he's in, so that you bring out his the best of him. So that's, and I think that what my advice would be to screenwriters is that it's a very lonely business. You're on your own with the film. And this is the first and last time that you'll be on your own with the film. And other factors come into it, like casting, like budget considerations, or all sorts of things that will change the script. And often it's the director's job to check if he's often written the script, but he has to change it to fit the actors and to fit the budget that he's got. You can, what I always do is, if I look at the budget, if the budget allows me 8 weeks shooting, you can't shoot more than 8 to 10, 8 to at the most 12 setups a day. Because if you look at it, if you're doing a 10-hour day, each setup, which has to be, you have to line it up, you have to light it, the cameraman has to light it, you have to rehearse it with the actors, and you have to shoot it perhaps 3 or 4 takes. Now, that if you fit all that into 1 hour, you're doing well. So 8 to 10 shots per day, and you've only got 40 days. So that gives you about 400 shots. So you write that number, anyway, I wrote that number on the top of the script. And as I work my way through, and I figure out how many shots any setups I'm going to need in each scene, and when I add them all up, and it comes to not 400 but 500 or 550. So I have to go back through the script and cut down some of the scenes and the number of shots required. So I always say that movie making is the art of the possible. And often restrictions are inspirations. You know, you're stuck. You can't get the scene in 3 or 4 shots. So you figure out a way of shooting that scene in 1 shot, and you're back on track then. So these are, you have to think about these things as you go along, not leave it, not write, you know, something unshootable and then have to plow through it and rewrite it. Well, just think of what your limitations are. And it always amuses me when people say, are you making a film at the moment? They usually mean, are you shooting a film? And of course, the shooting of the film is the shortest part of the whole process. You know, a film may take you 2 years. You've got you writing the script, casting the film, looking for the locations, and then you shoot the film in 8 or 10 weeks. And then you go to do the post-production, and you find that you've spent a year or 2 years on a film, but only spent 8 or 10 weeks shooting. So because that's the most expensive part of the whole process. So you've got to be ready, you've got to be prepared, you've got to have all your shots worked out, and before you can't be on the set thinking, well, what shall I shoot now? the thing I always say to young directors is that before you end the day's shooting, give the cameraman a setup, the first setup for the next day, so that when he comes in at 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock, he's not waiting for you to give him the setup. He knows what it is, and he can start lighting it. And so that everyone starts working instead of smoking a cigarette and having a cup of coffee. The first half hour disappears with no work being had. So give the cameraman a setup as the last thing you do at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Thank you. For a young screenwriter like me, is important this answer.
And I have a personal question.
Yeah.
How important are critics for you?
How did what?
Movie critics, how important are their opinion to you?
Yeah.
Well, the thing that can keep your career going is selling tickets, getting an audience, a paying audience. But the film critics, I suppose, can help to make your reputation or to destroy your reputation.
Yeah.
So they are they go on what they see, and you have to live with it. You know, I can never remember the good reviews. I always remember the bad ones. Like, you know, the critic of Le Monde, Louis Mackerel, he caught up with me on the Croisette at Cannes, and he said, "I want to apologize to you for the review I wrote about Hell in the Pacific." I said, "Oh, wow, that's nice." I hadn't actually read his review, but anyway, he said, "It's a very bad film, but it's not as bad as I said it was." That was the only critic ever apologized for his review.
Well,
Thank you.
if I can ask something about the pre-production, let's say, about for Excalibur, when did your passion, your interest in Mallory's, Thomas Mallory's The Death of Arthur come from?
I had, since I was a child, I was always interested in the Arthurian legend, you know, and for me, what the legend is saying is that you know, that the Grail is lost, and the Grail represents wholeness, oneness, and the land falls into disarray and famine and all the bad things, and so that the quest for the Grail, which is going to restore the country, is a very fascinating idea. And the Grail, it means goodness, and is opposed by all the bad things. So so this myth, which is very ancient, has always fascinated me, and so I was really grateful that I was able to make a version of it.
Yeah, probably the most iconic.
I have used in a lot of my scripts for other films. I've used elements of the Grail legend. Some critics have claimed that there's something of the Grail legend in every one of my films.
Well, it's a cross-reference in every movie. It appears.
What?
Yeah, it's something that appears in movies because it's something that's dear to you.
Yes, well, I do when I'm writing, when I'm thinking of a story and writing it. I think of how it fits into the Grail legend, and often that helps because it's inspiration.
Amazing.
Yeah.
When you write a story, do you draw inspiration from Joseph Campbell, The Hero's Journey?
Yes, I've read. Yes, Joseph Campbell is very interesting, and he's very interesting in stories that are meaningful. And most even contemporary modern stories, can have their roots in the past, and that's very often how they appeal to people, because they sense that it belongs somehow to the nation, and that's stories have been told all through history and prehistory, and there were these mini singers, so-called, and they memorized the most elaborate stories, and they traveled the country telling the stories to people, and it wasn't, when it became possible to write things down, print stories, everything changed because it was no longer necessary to memorize. And it seems to me that in our world now, we've taken this to a further degree, so that my children, when they want to know something, they just Google it. And so there's no need to have a memory anymore, because the memory is done for you. It's there. A massive memory is available to you, so you don't have to remember things. This changes the course of education. Still kids have to learn and things by heart for their examinations. In fact, it's completely old-fashioned. The idea of having written exams is an anachronism, and it's old-fashioned. And they haven't yet caught up with the way people live today and their relationship with Google.
Yeah.
About Lord of the Rings, that you spoke with John Ronald Tolkien. Sorry. Tolkien. Sorry,
Yeah.
it's in Italian, it's a different pronunciation at times.
Yeah.
No, but I was United Artists had the rights to the Tolkien stories, and they asked me if I was interested, because I went to them with my Arthurian story, and they said, "Well, if you're interested, how about Tolkien?" I said, "Yeah, I like Tolkien." So I then, with my long-time collaborator, Prosper Pallenberg, we spent best a year writing this script about the Tolkien story. And when we finished it, United Artists were in great financial difficulties, and they couldn't afford to put up the money. That was obviously expensive, but Anyway, it didn't. So I didn't make it. But it was very interesting that I held the rights for quite some time, and but I couldn't get anyone to finance it. And then, of course, Peter Weir came into the picture, and at the same time as digital effects were coming in, and he was able to use these wonderful digital effects, which of course weren't available to me at the earlier time. And so I was, in a sense, had I made it, Peter Weir probably wouldn't have been able to make his version, which I thought was really terrific. And the way that he uses digital effects is really tremendous. I mean, like seeing a tree walking, you know, by roots, was wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, nowadays with the streaming era, with Netflix and similar, we're seeing many extended cuts or director cuts of movies coming out. Do you have any movie that you'd like for a director's cut to come out?
No, because you know, when I've always insisted in the films I make of having a final cut. So all my films are director cuts. I don't have anything to add to them or take away.
I see. Amazing. I see. Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, the Coen brothers that I admire. They did the director's cut of the first film they made, the second film they made, and it was 7 minutes shorter.
Oh. Is there a recent movie that has impressed you?
A movie that I could do what? That you could what?
That's impressed you, that you liked.
A recent movie that impressed you?
Well, no. Well, I mean, I'm not making any movies anymore. I'm too old and I've got too many problems. I haven't got the energy or the vitality that you need to make a movie. So I have a couple of screenplays that were great. I greatly loved, and I wasn't able to make them. The first was called The Halfway House, which was the story. In my imagination, this was the place you go to when you die, and you then, in my imagination, you get as DVD, as a video of your whole life, and you have to edit it down to 4 hours, and then you put it in front of an audience, and they give it a 1 to 10, and when you've got made it beautiful and meaningful and you only then can you move on to the next stage. So I made this. I very much wanted to make that, and I couldn't get the money to do it. And then I made, right at the beginning of my career, I wrote a script about a dystopian story, really, about the end of the world, and the attempt, the world was coming to an end, high winds and earthquakes and all kinds of things. And they realized that the world was coming to the end. And this wizard in the story, he makes objects disappear. And when they say, well, okay, can you bring them back? No, they're gone to the other place. And he then teaches this to his son. And his son becomes able to make objects disappear. And then his father eventually says, son, I want you to make me disappear. I want to go to the place where the objects are. And if I can make a bridge and bring everybody over. There's, in other words, to another world. And so the world was dying, and he found a bridge to another world. That was a lovely story. I never got a chance to make it. But there you are. I made a few films that I wanted to make.
Beautiful story. Beautiful story.
Yeah, really amazing stories.
Good story.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want more.
Yeah. And
so what are you guys doing? Are you gonna make films yourself?
yeah.
We hope one day, maybe, perhaps. We're all movie fans, and we all have studied different aspects of movie making. So yeah, it would be our dream to sometime manage to make a film or something similar.
Yeah. It's very hard. You know, they used to have when films cost much less. There was a saying in Hollywood: "There's nothing as scared as $1 million."
Yeah.
You've got $1 million to invest. There are a lot of things you can invest in. You know, you can build a house or a couple of houses, or you can put it on the stock exchange. But where would you want to put it into a film? Well, I suppose the answer is that every now and again, that $1 million of investment turns into $100 million. So that's very rare.
Yeah.
So, this French producer I was talking to, and I said, has anyone worked out how many films what percentage of films lose money, and what percentage make profits, big profits? And he said, well, like this, he said, in human births, he said 85% are healthy. And he said 5% have some minor thing wrong with them, and 5% children die in birth. So he said, in movies, it's the other way around. In other words, 85% of movies lose money, 5% break even, you know, and 5% make a lot of money. It's the reverse of birth.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And I have a question. What do you think of Netflix? What do you think about streaming platform?
Netflix. Well,
yeah,
I think what's happened partly because of the COVID pandemic. The cinemas have been closed, and so you're forced to watch films on your television set.
Yeah.
And so the small screen has somehow won, and you see the enormous success of Netflix. And a lot of several I have friends have made films for Netflix, and they all complain that Netflix won't allow you to put any lenses into the camera, like to soften it or anything, because they want a very strong, straightforward negative, because it has to be transmitted on through television. So anyway, that it seems to have come to an end. I don't know whether the cinemas can ever recover.
Oh.
I think people will go along to see a spectacular picture in the cinema.
Ah.
But I think that and of course, during these films made for Netflix are very more like television. They look more like television than movies. I mean, there are some very good ones, but on the whole, the small screen does diminish, and the big screen makes films bigger and better.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah.
It's the theater experience is something that can't be exchanged with the screen, even a big screen, but not the movie screen, let's say.
Yeah. Well, let's hope it comes back.
Yeah. Well, talking about movies, is there any recent movie that you liked, that you enjoyed a lot?
Say that again.
I'm sorry. Is there any recent movie that you saw that you enjoyed?
Well, there's been very few movies made in this last year during the lockdown.
Yeah. Well.
And I haven't seen anything really. I think since I think the film that impressed me deeply was the film that the Mexican director made that won the Academy Award. Do you remember?
Roma.
Yeah.
Roma. Yeah.
I thought it was a great film.
Yeah.
Do you like it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's really it's a really great movie. Yeah, I saw some of your opinions about some movies that you saw for the Academy Awards a few years ago, like Birdman. I think you were talking about Birdman as well, and yeah. So I wanted to ask you about something that you saw recently, but yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Good to meet you.
Okay, you wrote a novel, Crime in Passion, many years ago, and we hope it arrives in Italy soon.
That'd be cool.
Do you want to tell us about it?
Well, it's about the making of a film, really, and it follows it. I wanted to make it to show how that a film can change. It starts off with a screenplay which gets several drafts and changes, and then the cast come into it, and the cast, in this case this girl, comes into it, and it changes. It becomes her story rather, and and we follow it. And so, and all the things that can go wrong with and affect a film, a detailed there. It's very much, I think it is very much like how a film is made and all the difficulties that occur.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Well, let me know. Let me know if you get any interesting. And I look forward to seeing you again. And
Yeah, well,
keep in touch. Keep in
well,
touch.
it was really, it was amazing having you. So thank you so much. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your amazing art.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
You are a
Thank you so
legend.
much.
You are a living legend.
Absolutely.
We
Perfect.
perfect. Bye.
Bye. Have a
Bye.
nice evening.